Emil Smith-Rowe bursting into the box, and that is a wonderful finish from Emil Smith-Rowe. It's his first goal in a Fulham shirt, certainly at Premier League level. It's the first of many, and look at the smile on his face. That's a quality goal from a quality player.
Hello and welcome to the That's So Craven podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Fulham. We are back, and it's off the back of a 2-2 draw with Bournemouth at the Cottage, the last fixture of 2024. What a year it's been. What a great run we've been on as well. Let's be honest, there's been some really good moments over the last 6 weeks or so. Some great results. And look, I think this was an interesting way to end the year. Here to talk it all through, we have, first of all, Skibby. How are we going, Skibby?
Yeah, I'm all good. Yeah, I mean, you're quite right. It's been quite a 6 weeks. I mean, I've forgotten what it feels like to lose, so that's been a nice feeling. A great end to 2024, so hopefully it continues in 2025. So, may
Absolutely.
It continue anyway.
Joining us as well, we have Dave. How are we going today, Dave?
Yeah, good, thanks. I'm pleased to be back, and looking forward to talking about this one. There's lots of talking points, and as you say, it's been a great run, and you know, maybe we could have even picked up a few more points on that run, which is crazy when you think about the teams that we've played. But we keep going. We've got some good fixtures ahead as well, so it's exciting times.
Yeah, we really do have some good fixtures. We'll touch on that a bit later. And final guest for today, Mary Southgate. How are we going today, Mary?
Yeah, good, thanks. Good to be on here again. And going into Christmas at the top half of the table, can't be complaining. And hopefully we don't experience any more losses. And we don't know what that feels like for the rest of the season. But yeah, no, good. Lots to talk about yesterday's game. I think I've just about stopped watching Wilson and Muniz' goals from Stamford Bridge as well. So
No, they should never stop being watched, let's be honest. Before we crack into everything, just as always, a mention for our Discord. You can find all the links in our bios. You'll find them on Twitter, on Blue Sky, on Facebook. Everywhere you find us, you'll be able to find a link to the Discord. Please do join into the community. It's growing every single day. You can follow along live for every game as well. If you're ever looking for a way to interact on game day and you're not able to get to the game itself, it's a very good place to be. I'll just leave it at that. We're also, as I said, on Blue Sky, obviously a new social media platform as it's currently growing. Please do make sure you follow us. We've also put together a starter pack so you can follow all the biggest Fulham accounts on Blue Sky. Guys, before we actually crack into the game itself, let's just sort of, recap. We played 19 games now, so we're exactly halfway through the season. I saw a little stat saying that this is the second most points Fulham have ever had at the halfway point in a season. More points than when we pulled in our record points tally back in, I think it was 07, 08. No, can't have been 07, 08.
08, 09.
Whatever that season. 08, 09. Yeah, you're right. It's only 4 losses in the Premier League this season, which after 19 games is kind of staggering and almost a little bit unbelievable when you consider we've had to play every team at least once so far. You look at a team like Man City, we played them when they were actually playing quite well. Liverpool have been outstanding this season, holding them to a draw. Arsenal to a draw. It's been a great season so far. Mary, did you expect us to be in this position come, at the end of the year?
No, in the short answer. I think especially after last season when we've lost Mitrovic, we lost Paulinho, I think we were all a bit like, where are we going to go from here? But we've pushed on so much more. I think it's every match now. I look at every fixture list or every week, and I think we can win that, we can win that, we can win that. And there's just so much confidence going around, which didn't expect it at the start of the season, but definitely not complaining. It's really enjoyable. It's every game's exciting, and yeah, I think there's so much more to come. We're pretty much safe on points, which is a lovely place to be as a Fulham fan. But yeah, I think Marco Silva's been outstanding. He is just brilliant. He set good foundations for the second half of the season. And it's very fun to be a Fulham fan at the moment.
It really is. Skibby, I'll throw to you. Do you reckon Well, do you reckon we could? Well, actually, we could almost be in a better position at this point in the season. But do you kind of are you happy with where we're currently sitting in 8th place? You know, pushing on those European spots and still putting that pressure on for a much higher finish than maybe we expected at the start of the season.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I mean, when you consider that, Paulinho leaving was a huge thing. There was no one in Europe who could do what he does, especially in the stats world. Absolute animal, 7 tackles a game, was just levels against anyone in the top leagues in Europe. So, we got to a point where we knew he was leaving. We didn't know who would come in. There was no direct replacement. But, credit to Marco Silva. We've adapted. We always said, especially with, like Mary said, when Mitrovic left, we thought, oh, how are we going to pick up goals? But, we adapted. And it always just gets to a point where we think, well, we're going to, the sky's the limit. We're going to really push on now. And, someone comes in and takes one of our best players. So, I think I would have expected to be comfortable upper, lower half, if that makes sense. So around the sort of 13th, 14th place. But not in any real danger. I think we were just sort of picking up points. And I've said it before, this is sort of a transition year for me, mainly because of that sort of Paulinho absence. But, we have adapted. But I think we've also found a player in sort of Berger, and Lukic has really stepped up and allowed us to really sort of push on and become a better team. And I think that's credit to the recruitment, credit to the players, and the coaching staff. So I think everyone is on the same level here. And yeah, like you say, we could have picked up more points. We could actually be in a much, much nicer position if we didn't, step up against Southampton. That was a bit of a disappointing 0-0. If we didn't let Leeds slip, which I think I saw a stat, which we had taken the lead in 12 of our sort of 19 games. So that being able to score first was actually a really good sort of stat and a good sort of passage of play that we could have in the way that we would take to the game and get that early lead and hopefully hold on, but wasn't to be. So I think if it wasn't for a few defensive mistakes and we're a bit more solid, we could be in a lot nicer position. We could be up there with Nottingham Forest, to be fair. And I thought that would be a weird thing to say come August, come sort of earlier in August, to say, oh yeah, we want to be on level points with Forest. I mean, that would be relegation form, surely, but they're doing it. And I think that's almost credit to where teams have gone in this sort of season in terms of, Arsenal were relying on set pieces, their Stoke tactics, and it works for Forest. It works in their favour. They got this big lump up front, Chris Wood, and he's just banging in goals, and they're solid at the back. They're scraping these 1-0 wins, which is fantastic for them. But yeah, the table's weird, but I'm absolutely happy where we are, and I think we could, as long as we don't hit that kind of run, which is very famous for Fulham, which come to about March, April time, and we just take the foot off the gas and just peter off. But I think if we're able to sort of push on and carry on the form that we're showing, potential recruitment in January as well, then we should be able to smash our points tally or record points tally and hopefully sort of solidify one of those sort of top 8 spaces.
And Dave, Skibby mentioned something interesting there, talking about losing Paulinho as one example. But if you look back before that, losing Mitrovic as well, and we haven't replaced them in a sort of like-for-like way, if you will. When our biggest players have left, we've kind of been left with holes, and we've done, I guess, what you could call a patch job, which is maybe a little harsh, but let's be honest, when you look at the quality of players like Mitro and Paulinho, and you replace them with Jimenez/Muniz and Sander Berger, it is a clear step down in quality. But the fact that Marco is effectively getting the same sort of results out of lesser players has to be applauded.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's, Marco's a genius. We sing it and it's true. And he just seems to be able to keep rebuilding this team. I mean, we're talking about Mitrovic, one of our record scorers, Paulinho. He is still a top class international player. The forgotten man, Willian, who was been really important for us over the last couple of years. No one even remembers who he is anymore. You know, that's a real testament to how, you know, Marco's, you know, rebuilt the team and given us, you know, replaced him in the side. And, you know, we're not even thinking about him and what he brought to the side anymore. We had fringe players that were really important too. You know, Bobby Decordova-Reid was, you know, still an important player for us last year. And Tosin was at the heart of our defence. But we recruited well, and Marco has just created a really, really strong team spirit. We saw it in pre-season. I think we've seen it all the way through the year on the Fulham social media clips, and now we're following all various players like Calvin Bassey and Alex Iwobi. We can just see what a great vibe it is at the club, and I think we're seeing that on the pitch, that we're seeing a team that's confident in the manager, a team that understands the system and the tactics he wants to play. And yeah, it's been fantastic to see how competitive we are in every match, you know, every single match, even the games this year where we've lost by more than a goal margin. So Villa and Wolves, there was moments in those games that affected those results. You know, we were in those games until the, you know, various things happened that swung the game in our opposition favour. But so I think we've been competitive every game. That's always, you know, such a massive plus point, because it means that we can go to places like Anfield and the Etihad and, you know, White Hart Lane and come away feeling aggrieved that we didn't, you know, get 3 points. So yeah, you know, there's still work to be done. I think there's still some issues that, you know, have held us back a little bit. We all know about this problem we have conceding after half time. You know, it happened again yesterday. Late goals as well. We've been scoring them, but we've also conceded a fair few, which have held us back and, you know, stopped us from, you know, really maximizing our, you know, potential, I think, in the way that you see Nottingham Forest have. So there is still a bit of work to be done. And we all know that, and we're all looking at January and thinking, what can we do to improve? So yeah, but you can't knock where we are, 8th in the league, you know, 29 points from 19 games. You know, that is ahead of par for, you know, where I thought we'd be. And I'm just think the run of games now gives us an opportunity to really kick on.
Yeah, no, you're right. It really does. We've managed to get through what looked like being an incredibly tricky period. And actually pulling a lot of points out of that time, where, you know, if we hadn't picked up those points, it's very easy for us to slide down the table. As it is, we're kind of disappointed that we're not in 6th place at the moment, which is, like you said, a very weird place to be. And if we looked at a couple of the games that have gone over the last sort of 2 months or so, where we have dropped silly points, I think Southampton, I think Wolves, where we really shouldn't be losing, let alone getting thrashed. We could be a lot higher up the table, and as Skibby said, we could be sort of on par with Forest, which is a weird thing to be saying and hoping for, but that's kind of where we are this season. It's a very strange Premier League season. Let's get into the game itself, and Skibby, I'll throw to you first, and then we can sort of pass around the group. Thoughts on the selection, because off the back of the Saints game, there's a disappointing result. Then at Chelsea, we obviously switched to, you know, 5 at the back and made a bit of a tactical change. Were you expecting us to stick with 5 at the back, knowing that we had that injury issue? Or did you think we might actually just mix it up a little bit against Bournemouth?
I personally thought we'd stick to 5 at the back. Not really over the injuries, but I think just more of the way that we were very positive against Chelsea. I think when you think of 5 at the back, you think about Parker days where you're parking the bus and you're just sitting back trying to get bodies behind the ball and just hoping for the best. But I think in this game, I think it was much more positive. You know, we had Anderson in who could sort of step in, move the ball around and pick out passes, but then that also gave Bassey and somewhat Diop the freedom to be able to go forward. So I think it was quite nice in a way that it was a positive move to go to 5 at the back, and I thought that was something that we could use for Bournemouth. I think the changes that we saw was Muniz was banging on the door for a start, and Wilson as well, obviously off the back of beating Chelsea. It feels so good to say. But I think for me it was the right call to leave Raul in the starting lineup. I thought his link up play and intricacy was much better than Muniz. I think Muniz is obviously that kind of bruiser. He'll get up amongst it and try and fight for every ball, where I think Raul was a bit better in terms of more technical, coming in deep, trying to bring the wingers into play, and I thought he did that really well against Chelsea. So I know Muniz got the goal to win the game, but I think for us, in a game which would be a similar opponent in terms of the way that Bournemouth like to attack, and they're very technical and a very good team all round, I thought that Raul was the right choice. And Muniz for me is just a different animal coming off the bench. I think he's just we just don't get the same player when he starts at the moment. So I think keeping it the same and bringing Wilson in as well. I think allowing Wilson to start the game, I think, was a good choice as well, just because he's just showing an all-round good performance from him. He's very defensive, very good attacking, just all-round better. I think, and again, Adama is just a good player to bring on. So I thought Wilson deserved his chance, but Raul, for me, did enough to solidify his space as a starting striker, and for good reason, as we will come to. But I think it was a great choice, and well, I will change my tune as the game unfolded, but we'll go into that.
Dave, your thoughts on, I guess, the lineup and sort of where we were, well, what you were expecting from the game?
Yeah, I mean, I did think we'd stick with the 5 at the back, having brought that in at Chelsea, and just because of the injury to Berger mainly, I think they're looking for a solution in that, to cover Berger really, without another kind of holding midfield player to do the double pivot. I thought, I actually expected Wilson and Muniz to come in. We spoke about this in our group chat before the game, and I think where I got to is, I'm always kind of the opinion that if you've got a striker scoring, as Muniz has in the last 3 games, and prior to yesterday, Raul had only got 2 in the last 11. And missed quite a few chances along the way. I don't think he's necessarily played badly. I agree with Skibby. I think his build-up play has been good at times. But I just wondered if we could give Muniz the opportunity to see if his confidence and his tail is up, whether he could continue that run. And I thought maybe Marco would have given him his chance. And I know he did also say that if Raul does get the start, and I'm sure he's going to score now, can see without running away with it. That's exactly what happened. Silva stuck with Raul, and ultimately Raul scored. Again, I don't want to get too far into the game because I know we'll come to that. But up until that point, I didn't think he'd had a particularly good game, but he took the goal really well. And if he's going to score goals, then he justifies his selection.
Mary, I'll ask your thoughts on the lineup, but also, we saw 5 at the back work really well against Chelsea. How did you feel we coped against Bournemouth, who seemed to set up slightly differently and maybe expected it a little bit more? I think we caught Chelsea by surprise a bit with our tactics, but it seemed like Bournemouth were ready for us a little bit more than Chelsea were.
Yeah, I agree. I think firstly, just like everyone said, I expected the same lineup, the same formation. Pleased to see Wilson come in. I think he's outstanding at the moment. He was player of the match for me. I thought he played really well, and starting Jimenez obviously paid off. But yeah, I think we knew it would be a really tough game against Bournemouth. They play very similar style to us. They were pressing us high. They was attacking us. Getting numbers up top, and so I think, I mean, they were the better team, I'd say, to start with. I'm not sure if we're getting into the game yet, but
Go for it.
Yeah, I think first half they were better. I think they were quicker. I think they were pressing us really high and making it difficult. And they were on our first touch. I think the balls, when you say, oh, it's just not falling for us. And I don't think it was falling for us in the first half until we scored. But I think that's a lot because of the way that Bournemouth were pressing. They were on our toes, and they'd obviously done their homework on us. They were prepped for what we do. There was glimpses of good moments in the first half, but I think they made it difficult for us initially.
Yeah,
I think, like you said, we're missing that double pivot at the moment. I think we'll go back to that when we've got it, because it's a lot more stronger for us and we play better that way. But I think they were prepped for us and made it tricky in that first half.
I thought it was going to be a tough game anyway, purely just we've had the elation of the Chelsea game at Stamford Bridge, and to like re-motivate the team for like a game a few days later. I always thought that was going to be tricky, especially a good side like Bournemouth. So I thought it was going to be tough going into the game. And you're right, the first half they had the better of. They seemed to be the team pushing, and they'd flip, obviously, as well. They'd flipped us around, hadn't they, at the start of the game, which I always think is a great tactic. I don't know why we don't do that when we're away from home. Just unsettle the home team by switching them around, because
and it unsettles the fans as well.
It does. It just seems to be a bit of a no-brainer for me. I don't know why we don't do it every time we get the chance, but they certainly were the team that put in pressure on us, and we looked a bit like a team trying to figure out a new formation, I thought. And unfortunately, I think we also didn't quite have, the three at the back didn't quite counteract the issues that we'd had in front of them in the midfield, where Lukic didn't look 100% fit to me. Not that he played badly, just I don't think he was quite, his 100% self. I think he might still be carrying a bit of a knock or something from the Southampton game. He's played a lot of games. 290 minutes since then, and it's probably starting to catch up with him. And Andreas started in the 8, and I think we've seen all season that he's really struggled in that role, in the 8 role. And he had a dreadful half. He was kind of not really, helping us defensively. He seemed to be kind of quite high up on the right hand side, kind of leaving Lukic a bit isolated. But I think what was more disappointing is that he was breaking down attacks with just some really wasteful play, a game which we have seen a lot of this season when he's played number 8. So that was a real concern going into half-time.
I think, as Mary said, for me, it felt sloppy. It wasn't really falling our way a fair few times, but, the ball was getting stuck under players' feet. There were simple passes that were going astray. We were sort of, an aerial ball that could have been comfortably taken down to feet and then played out was being headed back to the opposition. Like, it just felt like, I think I put it in our group chat, it felt like we'd played Chelsea the night before and got on the piss and just rocked up onto the team bus the next morning. Like, it just felt like we were hungover, really. And the commentators mentioned it as well on our live stream. They did say that it's probably a little bit hard for these Fulham players to come down off that high of the Chelsea game. It was such a good win, such a good result. And you do obviously get filled up with that sort of emotion from that game. And it is hard to then, pull it all back together and get back to the next one and start again. And with the congestion of fixtures around this time of year as well, it does make it tough to continuously put in good performances. I think it was interesting seeing Silva as well say that, yes, the 5 at the back didn't really work quite as well as it did against Chelsea, but it's good that we've got a bit of a plan B now. And I think that's something that I've always not worried about as such, but always wished we had a little bit more of from Marco. It's always been a single plan that we've had, and we kind of have to stick with it. And we've often shoehorned players into different positions just because we don't really have any other options and we've only got a plan A. It's quite nice to see us actually have a plan B that does work. It needs a bit of work because we saw with Anderson was obviously trying to step up and support the midfield, but that was leaving spaces at the back, and Bassi and Diop maybe weren't covering those spaces quite as well. And I think that's where Bournemouth's first goal sort of, that was one of the main reasons, I think, is the Anderson just seemed to be losing his positioning a little bit because maybe he was just being asked to do a little bit too much as someone who's meant to be stepping out of defence. Skibby, let's sort of talk about the way Fulham handled Bournemouth. I think, like we've said, they pressed very well right from the start, and they are a very, hard-running team. Evan Nielsen, we mentioned it just before he scored, how much he ran all game long. He sort of runs himself into the ground until he gets those opportunities, and Bournemouth put us under a lot of pressure for the majority of the game.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the best way for Bournemouth to approach this game is you've got Anderson, who's just come back from an injury, so he's not the sharpest. And not only that, but he's also coming into a formation which you've only used once, and that was the game previously. So there were opportunities to make mistakes and force mistakes from the back. And I think you're quite right in the way that the way that we set up is probably not beneficial to Anderson's game. Asking him to sort of step forward and potentially kind of be that link to the midfield is a bit much to ask for your central defender. But I do feel that when you look at this 5 at the back system, when Berger's back and when Tete's back, no disrespect to Castagna, but it really does sort of suit those two players. That I think that if you've got the two pivot that can sit in front of them and protect them, then Anderson is then going to be asked to be more of your sweeper, your last point of call for defence. And we touched upon it, and I think the way that we saw it work against Chelsea is that, Anderson was almost like our sweeper, and that allowed Bassi, and not so much Diop, but allowed Bassi to bomb forward, and we saw that again against Bournemouth. But again, they were able to sort of counteract that. I did find that the Bournemouth sort of wingers, they did get in behind our wing backs and potentially putting a lot more pressure on Bassi and Diop than Chelsea did. And that's where I was seeing a lot of the luck. I don't think it was more Bassi and Diop having to counteract the central and back up Anderson. It was more they were being ganged up on, and the fullbacks, well, not the fullbacks, but the wing backs just weren't close enough to be able to defend. And I think Bournemouth just did it quite well. And it all came down to that composure level that you talked about. Andreas had a terrible game. He just couldn't string a pass together. Not to say that anyone else could, but it was more the fact that he was trying, and you could see it visibly, 2 things. He was really trying to make amends for his previous mistake by doing something which, in my head, as a manager or as a coach, you're saying, just get the ball down, play it back, just get a feel for the ball. And he just wasn't doing that. He was trying to combat his mistakes with some more Hollywood balls, just to say, well, people will forget this mistake if I do something awesome right now. And then that just didn't work. And then he began to panic. And you said about the ball up in the air, he could take it down or do anything with it apart from just head it straight back to them. And you just want to put your head... And there were so many times I put my head in my hands. It's just, mate, either someone's got to give him a shout, just take the ball down and just, recycle
Play
the ball.
simple.
I hate that term. But play it simple. Exactly that. And you just didn't see that. And you're just pulling your hair out. But I think it was the panicking on the ball. But then also Lukic was getting visibly annoyed because Pereira just wasn't anywhere near him. And he was just having to do everything. The amount of times you looked over and he was arms stretched out like, dude, where are you? I think I counted about 4 times that he did that. And I think once you kind of got one central defensive mid who's doing the job and one who isn't, then you're asking for trouble. We were overrunning that midfield. And I think as the half went on, the more I was thinking was, we don't need 5 at the back. And Anderson, to me, even before the goal, wasn't playing to the best of his ability. He wasn't as commanding as he normally is. And I was thinking, this game is just crying out for Anderson to be pulled. Bring Kearney in. I mean, when you've got someone like Kearney on the bench who can do exactly everything I just said that Andrea should be doing, which was get a foot on the ball, take your time with it and just calm everything down. The game was crying out for Kearney in my eyes. But, I mean, what do I know? We then went 1-0 up. So,
well, I mean, we'll definitely touch on Kearney later because I think he, has a claim for man of the match in this one. But look, let's talk about. There were 2 flashpoints in this half. They were only a couple of minutes apart. The first one is obviously the goal. The second one, I'm going to throw to you last, Skibby, because I know you got a rant building up inside you. The challenge that could potentially have been a red card. Mary, let's talk about the goal first. It's a goal from a set piece, something that we haven't seen much of so far this season, but it's a really well taken one. Andreas Pereira swings the ball in. Raul Jimenez is in absolute acres of space, which for someone who is so good with his head is a poor piece of play from Bournemouth to allow him to get that space. But watching it back, it is a very good set play where I think it's Diop and Anderson put the block on for him. But a great finish. Your thoughts on the goal?
Yeah. No, it's a clever corner. Just before it was taken, we were all like, oh, we've got a corner. But then I looked to my mum and said, we're going to score this one. I've got a good feeling about this.
How many times you said that this season? Like
not for many corners, that's for sure.
So 40% of the time, it works every time.
Not for corners, I don't. But maybe that will change now. But it was a well worked corner, and like you said, he's good with his head. He had a couple chances of his head in the second half as well, which I know we'll get to second half. But they were saved off the line, so it is a threat of his, which is really good. And I think it was well worked. It was good to put Anderson and Diop as the blockers as well. Obviously with their strength, Diop's height, it worked well. So. Good assist for Pereira in a game where he wasn't doing quite so well. But maybe this is the start of our set piece run.
Oh, let's
Although I would say
I do think, come on.
I do think it was slightly against the run of play, if I'm honest, but not complaining. It's a good way to finish the half, sending them in 1-0 down when you know you're the better team, perhaps on their side. They're going in quite deflated at 1-0. So it's a perfect time to score. And it was well worked, yeah.
Yeah. Skibby, your thoughts on the goal?
I was annoyed that Pereira was taking the corner when Wilson
you had
was
Wilson.
on the pitch.
Yeah.
It just didn't make sense to me. We saw the stats previously, which was, Pereira can... In swingers, I think he was getting about 70 to 75% success rate on like finding a Fulham player, but I think it was like 3% on outswingers. So we were saying, what's the point of him? I said to my dad, I was like, what is the point of him doing an outswinger right now when we've got Wilson who can whip it in? But hold my hands up, absolute peach of a ball. It was everything about it was perfect. Like the pace on the ball, the positioning, the run from Raul clearly worked on. And what a fantastic header. It was just, sometimes you get these where you just get anything on it and hope to beat the keeper, but it was so well placed. Kepa was grasping at anything, nowhere near it. Just a fantastic goal all round, really. I was just really happy. But yeah, I mean, it means we're showing that we're actually working on something now. And hopefully it's something that we can go on and hopefully improve and score more going forward.
And just an interesting stat here. I've just flicked slides across to show the stats from the game. It was our only corner of the game, which I was actually a little bit surprised by after the game to see that we only got one corner for the whole game, but we actually scored from it. Dave, Mary was just saying how, she said we were going to score from the corner. Very, very positive. Let's be perfectly honest. Your thoughts on the corner, as Skibby said, an outswinger, kind of unexpected. And like you said at the very start as well, you said guaranteed now that I've bagged out Jimenez starting over Muniz, he's going to get a goal, and he got one.
He did. And strange circumstances, completely unmarked. Outswinger, great header, to be fair. And just kind of surprised me. I think they just, I think it was in the first half, just before that, then they had a corner ruled out, which you may have already touched on. But which was a really interesting moment in the game because it looked quite soft, and the ref obviously blew up before the ball had gone in the net, meaning that VAR couldn't check it. Yet they got a bit muddled and decided to anyway, it seems. But they wouldn't have been able to overturn it. So yeah, it wouldn't have been undeserved if Bournemouth had taken the lead at that point. But then, kind of out of nowhere, we get our one corner of the game, and Andreas finds round, and all of a sudden, 1-0 up. And then actually, I think we ended the half quite strongly. There was a, great effort by Iwobi not long after that. That for a second I thought was just going to dip in at the far post.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really pleasing despite the performance to go in the lead.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, Mary, I'll throw to you first on this one. I don't know how many red cards you've got in your career so far, and I don't know how many challenges you've put in like that in your career. Maybe slightly more than one. But your thoughts on what turned out to be a yellow card, but I think could easily have been a red card on the day as well. And we'll sort of get into that in a bit more depth. Your thoughts on that challenge?
Well, I love a slide tackle. I'm here for it. But that was dangerous, and you can see it in the players' reactions. I think every player on that pitch swarmed straight over. Leno in and amongst it too, because obviously everyone can see he jumps into it. His studs were up. I think it was a dangerous tackle. They VAR'd it. I thought they were going to overturn the yellow card, but they didn't. But you can see it in the players' reactions. On the pitch as well if it's a dangerous tackle. And I think it was worthy of a red, to be honest. So it's I know Silver said it as well. I don't know why it wasn't a red. You think back to Tom Kearney's the other week. That is a red. Then why isn't this? So it goes back to the whole. I mean, you can have a rant about VAR for ages. About why is one thing getting a red and then he's not yesterday. So yeah, for me, red card. Thankfully, that's not a challenge I would do. But yeah, it should have been a red. I don't know why it wasn't. They probably won't explain it. They'll just move on and think they're right. But that would have been a changing point in the game. And I agree with Dave. Just before half time, we were pushing on. I thought we were going to get a second straight after. Iwobi's liking that shot at the moment. Just that curler into the top corner. So I thought it was going to go in. But that would have changed the game as well.
And with Iwobi, he gets opened up. He gets that opportunity a lot because of the threat of Robinson outside him as well. You see Robinson darts around the outside of him, and both defenders just, completely ignored the fact that Iwobi still had the ball at his feet and started tracking the Robinson run. And it does just open up that space. And we've seen it quite a few times. Dave, back to the tackle, because I'm saving Skibby up for last here to have his comment on the tackle. But your thoughts, should it have been a red?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mary. I didn't think it was. I've looked at the replay quite a few times, and look, there's no doubt that he's just lost out on another tackle. The ball kind of bounces away from him, and he does lunge in. There's no doubt about that. But he gets quite a lot of the ball. I think it comes off his heel, and the way the ball shoots off, you can kind of tell that he's made contact, and. Yeah, I think if he hadn't have got the ball, then it would have definitely been a red card. But I think that just saves him. I think that if it was the other way around, I'd be a bit disappointed if I'd seen our player get a bit of the ball, albeit in a hard tackle, and he'd got a red card. I think I'd be a bit frustrated by that. So could be considered dangerous, I accept, but I just think that maybe he got enough of the ball to kind of warrant the yellow. And what I will say is I think if the ref had given the red on the pitch, it wouldn't have been overturned. I think they'd have kept it as a red. But I think that because he got the ball and gave the yellow, I don't think, and then VAR looked at it and saw that there was contact with the ball. I think that's why they didn't overturn it. But I'm sorry to upset you, Mary. That's just where I'm at with it.
And Skibby, go for gold, mate.
Well, Dave's just made a fantastic point, which is if he gave red on the pitch, then it wouldn't have been overturned. But my gripe with it all is, and I'm agreeing with Dave, by the way, just it wasn't a red. I don't think it was forceful. We've seen Paulinho do it many a time. It happens. But this is the thing. If the ref had given a red, then it wouldn't get overturned. But the refs and the linos now, not just the red cards, they're not in a position where they have to make the decision anymore. And that's what frustrates me with VAR. And I think they're lazy. They really are. They're not officiating the game. They don't really have to make these massive decisions anymore. And the reason being is because they got VARs on their back. So every situation, given it's a studs up challenge on the back of the leg, or like Tom Kearney's, or the challenge that we saw from Christie, every time that happens, they always go, okay, I'm going to have time to think about it. And everyone's swarming them. They go, I'm back. And then the yellow comes out. And then they get a radio to say, oh, yeah, maybe you want to go and take a look at this. And goes, oh, okay. And they go and have a look and they go, oh, yeah, that's pretty bad. And then they go, oh, yeah, then red. They don't have to make the decisions anymore. And that's what really gets on my nerves with everything. Because I don't know what they're getting paid for, to be honest. You might as well just have the whole VAR ref the game in that scenario. Just robots on the pitch just waiting and going, oh, that was a foul. Oh, that's a throw this way because we just checked it. And it's just stupid, because I think it's taking all the human element out of the game, because everything now gets taken into angles, slow-mo, all of this stuff. And there was this whole point where I was just getting annoyed with the ref just pretending that he's actually making a decision, when in fact he's just making the most lenient decision he can because he knows he'll get backed up by VAR. But then my real problem with it is how it doesn't actually relying on VAR is actually now problematic, because we saw it before with Brighton. I think it was a season, either 2 seasons ago or last season, where their striker was about 5 yards offside, and the lino said, oh, well, I'm going to rely on VAR. Didn't flag. He had a shot, got tipped round the post, and then they got a corner from it. And he was just relying on VAR, so if it's a goal, VAR will check it, chalk it off. But then it goes to a corner, and then if they score from that corner, they can't go back and go, oh, well, it wasn't actually a corner. So stop being lazy and actually officiate the game. And I think that's what's happening now, is that they're getting too over-reliant, and I don't like it. That's my rant anyway.
I think that's a fair call, though. Like, for that one, I feel like the ref bottled it. He was surrounded by players instantly, and you could just see in his face he had no idea what he was going to do. And the safest option there was to give a yellow card and put it into someone else's hands who didn't have 20 players surrounding him at the time. And as Mary mentioned as well, the problem is consistency. If Tom Kearney's challenge is given as a red card, then that one should be given as a red card. And similarly, the challenge on Diop for Bournemouth's second goal should be given as a red card as well. Yes, it's accidental, but it studs up down the back of someone's calf, which is exactly what Tom Kearney did. Accidentally studs up down the back of someone's calf. I don't understand what the difference is, and I think that's what Silver said as well. If Tom Kearney's gets given as a red, which had zero malice, it's an accident, how can this one not be given as a red card as well? I personally think, having watched it a couple of times, he does get the ball and follows through, and I don't want follow-throughs to be taken out of the game, because then I think everything will be a red card eventually, and you'll see players going down even more often because they got followed through. It's kind of 50-50, and it's a bit of a shitty fence-sitting answer, to be honest, but I'm okay if the ref just instantly brandished a yellow. VAR looked at it and said, look, you got a bit of ball first. But the problem I have, and I think it's similar to what you say, Skibby, is the ref just bottled it. The ref put it in someone else's hands, and that's the problem for me. Anyone else want to make further comment on that tackle before we move on? Because it is probably the biggest talking point from the game, because I think realistically, if he gets sent off at that point with Fulham 1-0 up going into half-time, it's probably game over at that point.
I think you're right. It's just the consistency, but that is a lot of things, isn't it, in the rules? And that's what we know. Refs aren't always consistent with everything they're doing. So, that's my only last disagreeing with what you're saying there. They've got to be consistent. Yeah,
I think we're all pretty happy with that. But look, it wasn't a red card. It didn't get overturned somehow. We go in 1-0 at halftime. I thought it was a pretty poor first half, and we were lucky to be 1-0 up.
Agreed.
It's interesting. Before the game, we had a few people round at our place And someone who's not a massive football fan said, are Fulham going to win tonight? And I just said, no, we should win, but we're not going to win. And it felt like that going in at half time, 1-0 up, should be feeling super positive, but it just sat in the back of my mind that we weren't going to be able to close this one out. And look, Evan Nilsson gets in behind Anderson. Mary is our resident professional footballer. Anderson, should he do better there? He's seeing a Skibby. I think you shared a screenshot. I can't remember if it was a tweet that someone put out, but Anderson loses Evan Nilsson here. Should he do better?
Yeah. He's very, I think his positioning was just all wrong. I don't even know if he knew that he was there. He needs to be more open, his positioning. Yeah, I'd fully say he is at fault for that one, unfortunately, and I don't think it's the first time we've seen it. I think the fact that he's been out for a bit, he was a bit off his pace in general yesterday. But it was totally could have been avoided. He just needed to open up and know he was there. And Lene was a bit left on his own there. Good finish, but could have been avoided.
When I watched it back, because I thought good finish as well, but I think it actually just comes off his shin. It's a little bit lucky.
Oh, really?
But I wouldn't begrudge him the goal because I thought he was excellent first half of Nilsson. Really impressed with him. He was super sharp around the box. Kind of player that I'd love for them to have at the moment. We all talk about this striker that could take us to the next level. That someone who's just always, a problem, a thorn in the side of the opposition. And I just thought he was busy and sharp all game. I was pleased when they took him off on about 70 minutes. But yeah, you're right. I think he's got in behind Anderson there and got a shot away at goal. So really needs to do better. And it's not the first time we've seen that, actually. We really don't want to be getting an
lost you there for a second, but I was about to say though, as you said, David, it's not the first time we saw a very similar goal by Cunha in the Wolves game. Skibby, is this maybe a weakness of Anderson, not picking up the runs coming from deep?
It's an interesting one because I think he is good enough to know better. And yesterday, I'm going to put it on rustiness. Wolves, I can only put it on an absolute dime of a pass by Mario Lemina because he just gets it right on his toe. It's an unbelievable pass. But I think yesterday really showed the more rustiness side of Anderson, which was he was standing on the left-hand side of the box. Evan Nilsson was behind him. He had no idea where he was. But the ball over, I don't know who it was, but the ball over from the Bournemouth player actually took a bounce before it got to Evan Nilsson. So how he wasn't there to mop up and don't let it bounce in the box, basically, for me just screams that he got his positioning completely wrong. And I think we saw elements of it before the goal even went in, that Anderson wasn't on par. He wasn't on his normal game. He was getting caught out. He was misplacing passes. He just looked all round rusty. And I thought at half time, we didn't need to have five at the back, like I said. And I thought this game was crying out for Kearney or even Smith Rowe. I mean, whether you bring on Kearney for Anderson to sort of shore up the midfield and move Andreas further forward where he's a lot more comfortable, or even just Smith Rowe just to come in and just, again, bring us a little more attacking. I thought just something just to give us a bit more of a presence in midfield. But yeah, I don't think it's a weakness in his game. I think it's a rustiness. And hopefully it's something that we can sort of sort out sooner rather than later. But hopefully in the next sort of couple of games we won't see or need to have five at the back because, Berger will come back in and will be a lot more familiar, shall we say.
And look, we were level for just 20 minutes. Not long after, we had Harry Wilson score yet again and another header. And I saw a stat. I think Harry Wilson's now scored 3 headers so far this season. Before that, in the Premier League, he'd only ever scored 1. And look, the man's on fire at the moment. He's putting every chance away that he gets. He's looking dangerous. He's getting into great positions. It's another great cross from Anthony Robinson, who is now the third highest assist maker in the Premier League this season, only behind Saka and Salah, which is just ridiculous. I saw someone saying he's the highest assisting defender so far this season, but I don't think that's as impressive as just being the third highest behind, possibly two of the best players or most informed players in world football at the moment. These are probably our two most informed players as well. Mary, how good has Robinson been, and how good has it been as well seeing him sort of play left wing over the last couple of games?
Yeah, he's been really high up the pitch actually, which has been good. And we know he's a big threat. He's the whole left side is. He's just going from strength to strength, and it's so good to see. I feel like it gets faster every time I see him as well. But yeah, like you said, that stat says it all. His assists are brilliant. He gets a number of balls in the box across the whole game, and then he'll get back and help defend as well. So Marco Silva's definitely pushed him on a lot. We know Silva's improved a lot of our players this season, and he is definitely one of them. But he's a key player for us. Thankfully, he didn't get his yellow card yesterday, so he managed to avoid suspension there. Otherwise, we'd be thinking, what do we do there? But yeah, he's brilliant. He's working well on the left. And I mean, like we said earlier, it's good that we've got another formation now, because now that we've played everybody, teams are going to have worked us out. They know where our strengths are. So it's good that we've got options, but I think he's flying in both options. I don't think he had his best game yesterday, but he was still very good. He got the assist, like we said. And Harry Wilson on the header again. I think there was a few people in the box that could have Robinson could have found, but yeah, brilliant header from Wilson. And I think he deserves his start again in the Ipswich game.
Dave? Or anyone? You're on mute,
sorry,
Dave.
I was on mute. Great header from Wilson. Really, really great header, because it's not like the ball's been powered in. It's kind of chipped in. He just gets a real strong header on it and puts it away. So yeah, and he's such a goal threat, a real goal threat for us now. I think he's certainly solidified his place in our team the next few games. Yeah, I think it's no coincidence that goal happened 4 minutes after Tom Cairney came on, because the second Tom Cairney came onto the pitch yesterday, the game changed. Bournemouth had, they'd got the but when we made that change, we just took advantage of the game, and Tom played as well as I remember seeing Tom play in some time. I thought he was just absolutely sensational. Everything he did just seemed to work perfectly. I think I'm losing a bit of signal here. Did I just cut out again? Sorry about that, guys.
No,
no, you're all
yeah, okay. So yeah, I was super impressed with him, and things just started ticking. He was moving the ball out wide. He was, really high pass completion rate, and it helped us create a lot more chances. And it wasn't a coincidence that a few minutes after that we managed to get in the lead, and could have potentially gone further in front with a few kind of half chances if we'd been a bit more clinical. I think we could have actually gone further ahead in this one. It was an incredible performance, and I really enjoyed watching his cameo yesterday.
Yeah, Skibby, Wilson, Robinson, just in such great form at the moment.
Absolutely. And I think 3 seasons ago, it was a running joke about how awful Robinson's crossing was. So he would always get into fantastic positions and then just overhit it out for a goal kick. And he always used to be like, it's so amazing until he gets that crossing. But he's clearly worked on it, and he's clearly improved, because his crossing now is, I reckon, more often than not, he's finding a Fulham player. Whether we score from it or not is another question, but it's clearly showing he's worked on it. He's worked hard on it. He's improving, and I mean, sky's the limit for him. Like if he keeps playing the way that he's playing, it's just a shame that he is an American with a Mancunian accent, but he could easily slot into that England side, and I'll die on that hill. But Harry Wilson, you mentioned about his heading. I actually had the stat up before we started, which was Harry Wilson has got the second most headed goals in the Premier League this season. I think the only person, the only person who's got more headed goals than him is Chris Wood.
Chris Wood,
he's on 4, so he's only one off Chris Wood. So he could, if he scores one more headed goal, he's equal with Chris Wood. So, that is incredible from a 5'9" winger, and it's also his conversion rate as well. I think he is the highest conversion rate from a winger at, I think, 38%. So, I think he's had 16 shots and 5 of them in goals. So it just shows that when confidence is flowing, it's almost like a performance enhancing drug, isn't it? He's just everywhere, and everything that seems to happen is through him. There was moments where he got sort of one-on-one, I think, from an early ball from Pereira, and the Harry Wilson of old probably would have taken a touch, lost the ball, maybe tried to hold it up and wait for people, but he just drove. He just went into that box and just tried to make something happen. And I think it was Timmy Castagna who had a shot straight at the keeper, but really well hit. But it's just that level of intensity from Wilson is just incredible, and he is vastly becoming like Iwobi. He's that undroppable player, and I think the system actually works in his favour, this 5 at the back, because he is technically a right winger, but when Castagna bombs forward, and potentially Tete in the future, he then goes more central and he becomes that kind of shadow striker behind the number 9, and he loves to be in and around the box, and we're sort of reaping the rewards from that. So I do think that this 5 at the back could actually work in his favour if we do use that going forward. But yeah, what a header it was. Fantastic header.
Yeah. And he did get central a lot throughout the game. I noticed he'd often be picking the ball up right in the middle of the park. And you're right, when Castagna bombs on, it just gives him that opportunity to drop in and find those spaces. And the left back, who's probably meant to be marking him, just isn't following him into the box. Because I think he heads it from the sort of left-hand side of the penalty spot. Yeah. But the left back's just, I think it was Kirkes, who's, one of the best left backs in the league this season as well, just doesn't track him at all. And it's testament to how well Harry Wilson slotted into that role, and how hard he's worked as well. And he's had to work hard to get himself into the team. And it's good to see when a player does work hard to get themselves in the team, they start scoring goals, and they, that confidence comes with it. And I'm glad we've been able to ride that wave from Brentford onwards, basically, with Harry Wilson. It's been amazing so far. And look, let's sort of skip forward right to the end of the game. There were a couple of half chances for both teams, I'd say, but the disappointing ending with Atara sneaking a goal, it's a really well taken finish, but let's be honest, it comes from some real sloppiness from someone who's been one of our best players, I'd say, over the last 4 or 5 games. Had to step in and take over from Bassi suspended, and then from Anderson after his injury. Diop has been great, and I don't want to load on him too much, but it's a really bad error. Dave, I'll throw to you first, because you love a Diop mistake. We all know that.
Well, yeah, a couple of pods ago, Skibby talked about my catchphrase, which was every time Diop makes a mistake, it ends up in the back of our net. And it was another classic example of that. I don't know. There's still lots that can happen between the point he makes the mistake, but it always just seems that passage of play ends up in our goal. It's just, so when he did pass it, and it was a poor pass, I don't even know who he was aiming for, but when he did pass it to them, I instantly thought, oh dear, because they started throwing players forward. At the time, it all kind of happened quite quickly after that. Ball in the box and a bit of a scramble, and then an amazing finish, actually, I thought, from their substitute. A little chip over Leno. Great composure at that level of the game. So fair play to him. It was only afterwards where, I saw on X the tackle on Diop, because he was down for ages after the goal, and it looked like VAR were checking it, but no one really knew why. But he was clearly fouled. It's clear as day. He was, there was a stud went into the back of his ankle, and no wonder he was down in a heap. And it's a really poor decision from VAR not to look at that. I actually can't understand it. They obviously just weren't doing their jobs properly. So, I did see someone say, a Bournemouth fan say, well, that makes up for the corner in the first half that was chalked off, which was really soft. That's that's one way of looking at it, I guess. But it's really poor for VAR to miss a tackle like that right at the end of the game, obviously cost one team a result. So, I don't want to kind of, as you say, get too hard on Diop because he has been excellent. But it was, a poor pass to start the move. But evidently shouldn't have been a goal if VAR had been doing their jobs properly.
Mary, your thoughts?
Yeah, the same really. It was so frustrating, wasn't it? Like, we're 2-1 up. Just game management. And I think we have the players and the experience to manage games a bit better there. Like Dave said, I'm actually not sure who Diop was aiming for. But I would have been hitting that space in behind. I think we've got Traore on the pitch now. We know his pace. So let's just last 5 minutes, get the ball in behind. There was so much space over that side. So I think that's where we should have been going. But like you said, he's been playing really well. I've been really impressed with him recently. So I don't want to be too negative on it. But he was fouled. So again, it goes back to that consistency. Like, why is that not being given if, they're looking at other fouls? I think that should have been disallowed, to be honest. But there was other moments we could have stopped that ball. I think it got through. I think when Diop went down, I think that ball got through 3 players. So again, could we have been tighter? But it's in the box. People have got to be careful. We didn't want to foul them and then give a penalty away. So, it could have probably been stopped before that. But I just think it goes back to game management. And I know this goal was near the end of the match, but we often give away goals at the start of the second half as well. And I think that's a similar situation. Like, we've just got to start managing those bits a bit better. You think back to like Liverpool, Arsenal, Brighton, I think. Did we concede early in the second half? And it's just moments like that. A team can concede at any time, but we've just got to look at those bits. I'm not being negative as such because we're doing brilliantly this season, but I think if we want to push on even more, there's just a few repeated things that are happening in those moments. So it's a shame. It's frustrating. Diop has been playing well, especially when he was covering for like Bassey and Anderson, who are the stronger two. I've not been worried with him there. So frustrating, but I think we just got to look at that. I think there was so much space behind for Traore to be running into, really.
Well, great segue, because I thought the exact same. And if you watch the game, like, I reckon 5 minutes before that goal, Diop kept getting the ball and he kept going into that space, but Traore kept coming deep and then just looking at him. And I was like, Traore, mate, you are the fastest player in the Premier League. What are you doing coming short? And Diop did it twice into nothing. And then the one time he goes short, Traore's not there. And it was just almost frustrating that, yes, it's a mistake by Diop, but I do think that Traore was also pushing him into that kind of decision-making where he was just panicked and thought Traore's going to be there or someone's going to be there. But there was the one time where Traore decided to go long, so it was just really frustrating. But that was the only thing I was going to say. Additionally, was he kept trying that ball. He just wasn't there. And then the one time he comes short, Traore's not there. So it was just
I remember that.
Bad all round. And I don't think you can pinpoint it just on Diop. I've seen a few people do it, but at the same time, I think it's just a lapse of concentration from that kind of right-hand side. But no, just to echo what you said, Jack, you got bottle jobs on the pitch and clowns behind the old screen, so you can't win either way. So, it is what it is.
That is exactly what I said. You're right, Skippy. Look, it's it feels fractionally disappointing, but at the same time, on the day, it didn't really feel like we deserved anything from the game based on the way we actually played. So to come away with a point kind of feels fair in the end of the day, but Yeah, look, it's a disappointing way to end the year after the high of Chelsea. I think that's the biggest thing for me. I thought we'd be able to kick on, but we do have some injuries. It was good to see Smith Rowe get on at the end, obviously coming back from an injury. Good to see Josh King get some more minutes. Tom Cairney, hopefully after that performance, will, actually maybe give a push to start. I think he did more than Pereira did in his 15 minutes, and Pereira did for the whole game. So yeah, there's a lot to consider over the next couple of weeks, and it's nice now we've got a week to actually recover, recuperate, get some of those injured players back into the side, get some training sessions in, and just sort of start fresh in 2025. I think the congestion and the mayhem of December is coming to an end now, and I look. We obviously play Ipswich in our next game. They are yet to play. I think they play tonight against Chelsea. So they've got a slightly shorter turnaround than we do, which will only hopefully work in our favour. And, they're struggling towards the bottom of the table at the moment, and I can't imagine they're going to get a result against Chelsea either. So it could be a good time to be playing Ipswich compared to the start of the season, where we came up against a newly promoted side who had a lot to prove, and they took one of their only 12 points so far this season against us. They now sit in 19th position on the table. So, look, I guess there's a few stats we can have a look at from the game. Fulham with slightly more possession, 52-48. Only 6 shots on target from Fulham, 9 for Bournemouth. Similar amount of passes. Fulham edge it slightly, just the one corner. Bournemouth slightly dirtier through the game with their 16 fouls to Fulham's 7. I think Bournemouth probably lucky to get only a handful of yellow cards throughout the game, because there were some pretty bad challenges throughout. But let's have a quick peek at the table. Fulham sitting in 8th place on 29 points. Still a few fixtures to go tonight and over the next couple of days as well. But we will definitely be in the top half after tonight's games. We've got Villa and Brighton sitting just below us, but we'll be ahead of Tottenham, Brentford, West Ham, Man United come tomorrow morning, which would be great. Look, it's something that I don't think we could have hoped much more from, to have started the season in this way. Sitting in the top half is something we always wanted to be doing. We only need 11 more points to hit that magical 40-point mark with 19 games to go. So we're in a really strong position at the moment. And as Steve says, the only stat that matters is we're unbeaten when Mary's on the panel. So we'll keep working our way to make sure that extends through to the end of the season somehow. But look, with Ipswich coming up on next Sunday, I think that's a really good opportunity for us to pick up a few more points, hopefully push into that top 6 and keep the pressure on for those European spots. Guys, I think we can probably wrap it up there. We will look to preview the Ipswich game coming up on Sunday. So I think we can call it quits on the Bournemouth game and move on from what felt slightly disappointing, and hopefully look forward to a good result against Ipswich coming up. Mary, thank you very much again for making the time to come on the podcast today.
Thank you. No, thanks for having me. It's good to chat about it. And I think, like you said, I think it was a fair result. We knew it'd be a tough game. We're sitting in about the same position, so I think a draw is absolutely fair, especially after the performance and after the adrenaline of Chelsea as well. I know, like, we probably will find it hard to sleep after seeing that result and like being an evening game. So I think for the players as well, I don't suppose they got to sleep very easily that night either. So I think that probably all played a bit of a knock-on into the Bournemouth game. But yeah, very positive first half of the season, and looking forward to the 2025.
Yeah, absolutely. Dave, thank you very much for joining today, mate.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be back, as I said at the start. And I just looking at the table, I was just thinking, it'd be so funny to go back in time to start the season and just to say to you guys, right, we're going to be 5 points clear of Tottenham, and we're going to be 7 points clear of Man United, and only 2 points behind City, but also 8 points behind Forest. Just to see the reactions on your faces, because I think it would have just been, what on earth has been going on? So it's been a really strange season, really, hasn't it? And yeah, I look at that table, 8th in the league. it's looking good. Could have been 6th, but we'll take 8th, and we'll push on.
Yeah, look, Dave, I think if you'd said that at the start of the season, we probably wouldn't have you on the podcast today, to be perfectly honest.
Sections.
But,
Yeah.
but you're absolutely right. You know, a couple of points behind Man City at this time of year, you'd expect us to be in 2nd place, but weird that we're in 8th place. And like you said, Forest absolutely flying at the moment. Hopefully we catch up to them and see them fall from grace. Skibby, thanks very much for joining today, mate.
No worries. Thank you for having me. And like to echo what the guys are saying, if you told me you'd have 4 points from Chelsea away and Bournemouth at home, by hand off. So I can't complain. It's just a great position to be in, unbeaten in, which feels like forever. So only way is up. Bring on Ipswich. I think, that'll be a good game. I reckon. I think they're going to be low on confidence. So should be a good start to the year, hopefully.
Absolutely. And look, looking at the table like we are at the moment, the only teams who have lost less games than Fulham this season are Liverpool, Arsenal and Chelsea. So that's a testament to the work we're doing. We might not have got quite as many wins as we would have hoped for, but the fact that we're not losing as many games this season is brilliant. And I hope it continues and we mirror the first half of the season in the second half of the season. So, guys, again, thank you. And thank you to everyone who supported us in 2024. We're hoping to have another huge year ahead, and we're hoping to be able to cover what is our most successful ever season in the Premier League. Thank you for everyone joining along on the live stream, everyone who listens to the podcast regularly. And as always, come on, you Whites.
You Whites.